Tonight, evacuation. 1 million Palestinians ordered out of northern Gaza ahead of Israel's planned ground invasion. Hamas calling for them to stay put.
I was very adamant about continuing our trip into Israel.
And show of solidarity. A bipartisan group of lawmakers visits Israel. Plus, the GOP scramble to replace the Speaker of the House. And still going strong.
Great leaders, whether they're there or not, are there.
President Jimmy Carter's legacy at Habitat for Humanity. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Mass evacuation orders in Gaza, with the globe on high alert as Hamas calls for a day of rage. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder.
And from our studio in Washington, I'm Caitlin Burke. 1 million people are under evacuation orders in North Gaza, but Hamas is demanding they stay. It comes as Israel prepares a full-scale ground invasion. Over the past 24 hours, Israeli Defense Forces carrying out local raids into the Gaza Strip on a mission to look for hostages.
Today, President Biden spoke on a Zoom call with the families of 14 Americans missing in Israel.
The President of the United States of America cares deeply about what's happening, deeply. We have to communicate to the world this is critical. This is not even human behavior. It's pure barbarism. And we're going to do everything in our power to get them home if we can find them.
This is all happening as Hamas calls for a day of rage around the world. In France, a teacher was killed and 2 others wounded in a stabbing at a high school north of Paris. French officials are investigating the stabbing as an act of terror. And as the Hamas-Israel war rages on, the Israeli army today released footage of airstrikes and missiles being launched from Gaza. And for more on this, let's bring in Joel Rosenberg, author, founder, and editor-in-chief of All Israel News and All Arab News, and host of the Rosenberg Report. Joel and his wife, we should mention, live in Jerusalem. Joel, welcome. It's great to have you with us. So we last spoke to you on Monday, Friday now. How have things changed since then from your vantage point?
Well, great to be with you, Jenna and Caitlin. I would say things have gone from bad to much worse. We're now at over 1,300 Israeli civilians have been murdered in this week of war. We're at over 6,000 rockets fired at us from Hamas terrorists in Gaza. When my wife and I and our 4 sons moved here as new citizens in August of 2014, it was the middle of a rocket war then. 4,300 rockets in that 1 month. There's now more than 6,000 in this 1 week.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this evacuation order that we've heard, over 1 million people ordered out of the north of Gaza. What does that look like, and what do you think that this means for the hostages?
Well, as an Israeli, as a Jewish person, also as an evangelical, I got to tell you how proud I am of my government for not just invading. We're going to have to do that. We don't want to invade, but we have to pull out this Hamas terrorist organization by root and branch. But I'm very proud and grateful to my government that they are warning innocent civilians to move to the south. They can't leave the country, but because there's no place to go. Egypt won't let them in, and we're at war. So, and their west side is the Mediterranean. So, we're giving them a lot of warning. But of course, Hamas is actually urging people to stay. Why? Because Hamas doesn't want to see just dead Jews. They want the dead Palestinians, because they want CNN and MSNBC and Al Jazeera and the New York Times and everybody, Washington Post, to make us look like monsters when we're defending of ourselves from the worst slaughter of Jews in a 1 week period since the Holocaust.
Yeah, the numbers and the images are just horrifying. It's a propaganda tool used by Hamas. So the U.S. and Qatar are now working together to stop Iran from accessing those $6 billion, Joel, that was in funding freed up from the prisoner swap just last month. But has the damage already been done?
Well, if you could stop $6 billion from getting to the worst terrorist regime on the planet, then that's a good thing. But the fact that the Biden administration wanted to give $6 billion to the worst terror regime on the planet and thought it wouldn't cause more terrorism is it is a psychological disconnect from reality. Like look, it's very strange. On the one hand, that is a terrible move, and it is part of the Biden administration trying to appease and cajole the Iranian leadership while not even inviting Prime Minister Netanyahu to the White House. That's horrible. But on the other hand, Biden is very pro-Israel, and Blinken was just here yesterday, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin here today, and they are helping.
Right.
But we need America's help.
All right.
And we're grateful.
Joel, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. Joel Rosenberg, to you and your wife, the very best, and please stay safe. Well, this operation has resulted in Israel's largest military call-up in history, with more than 360,000 reservists mobilized, a number amounting to 4% of Israel's population.
Reservists have shown no hesitation, whether at home or abroad. Within the Israeli Defense Force, it's known as the shift, going from 0 to 100, from civilian life to war in an instant.
The sea can be calm and easy and nice, but within minutes, you can get to a storm.
Arad Levertov is a reserve officer in Israel's most elite special forces unit, Shayetet 13. In 2006, he returned to combat for the Lebanon War, leaving behind his pregnant wife and a successful career to join his unit on the front lines.
I knew that my team was focused on the north side of Israel, and within hours, you leave everything. You say, you give a kiss goodbye, and you go to the war.
Now, a new generation of warriors answer the call, some responding immediately from their homes in Israel.
Within hours, the Shayetet had troops off reserve fighting against terrorists. Within hours, I'm talking about still Saturday, midday. Think about it. They left the life, they came to the base, they got the gear, they took a helicopter and went to fight.
Others returning as quickly as possible from abroad.
I jumped on the first plane I could and I came here. It's not easy to leave the family behind, especially because they are in the US. So it's not easy. But I feel that it's necessary.
Levertov now serves on the board of an organization known as AFINS, American Friends of Israel Navy SEALs. Since the attacks took place, they've raised more than $1 million to support Shayetet 13 units and their families. Their sister organization in Israel, the Atalef Foundation, spreads those funds where needed, from supplying equipment to help the influx of soldiers to providing housing and childcare to the families left behind. Levertov says these groups will also be there when the war is over.
There's going to be a lot of PTSD of this, right? I mean, people see something that you never even imagine and don't wish to your enemies to see. And that Atalef specifically has a lot of programs to support PTSD, not only for the Shayetet, but for the entire IDF.
For now, the focus is on the battle ahead, and Levertov says each soldier fighting is clear on their mission.
And the mission, as I mentioned, is to fight terror and to get that we can live in security in Israel, but not only in Israel, around the world.
All Israelis must serve in the military when they turn 18, men for 32 months, women for 24. After that, most can be called up to reserve duty until the age of 40 or older in the case of a national emergency. Levertov says after the Hamas attacks, 150% of the number called up responded to serve. Everyone eager to do what they can for their country.
On Capitol Hill, still no House Speaker. 10 days in, this is the longest stretch since 1971, and it looks like it's going to continue with no resolution in sight. Majority Leader Steve Scalise bowed out after it was unclear whether he could get the needed 217 votes. Representative Jim Jordan, the runner-up to Scalise in the first nomination vote, is still in the running.
I think I can unite the conference. I think I can go tell the country what we're doing and why it matters to them, and we'll talk about that. Can you get I'm in it. I think so, yes. I feel very confident in that.
Congressman Austin Scott also threw his hat into the ring today.
Here with us now, Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, Scalise is out, Jordan is still in, and today Scott threw his hat into the ring for Speaker. At this point, can any of these members get the 217 votes needed to actually take the job?
No clue. Back to you. No. Look, it's a GOP soap opera. It is as the world turns. We're watching it in real time. And Jim Jordan is the next man up, Caitlin and Jenna. And so look, with Scalise being out, the question is, can Jordan get to 217? And that means the power right now is in the hands of the establishment Republicans, the moderates, call them whatever you want. They can decide. If they get behind Jordan, they originally didn't. But if they get behind Jordan now, then he'll get there. If not, the possibility here could be a consensus speaker. In other words, the establishment Republicans get with the Democrats. Oh my gosh, did I just say that? And they all get together and say, we'll come up with a consensus speaker. It'll be a Republican, but it'll be most likely an establishment moderate Republican. And that's not what the Matt Gaetz crowd, the MAGA conservatives want at all.
David, you can see the frustration playing out on Capitol Hill. Representative Michael McCaul, who's the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, he has called this just a huge embarrassment for Republicans that hurts U.S. national security. Is he right, David?
Well, he needs to slow his roll a little bit, if I can be so hip. But he needs to settle it down. I mean, here's the deal. In a couple of weeks is when most likely there'll be a funding request for more funding for Israel in the war against Hamas and Iran and all of that. So they've got a couple of weeks here. And then, of course, the government shut down potentially in November. So, yes, it is getting to critical mass. It is not right there at this moment, but they need to get their act in order sooner rather than later, probably this week at the latest.
So right now, all the House can do is gavel in and gavel out. What about the idea of giving temporary power to Representative Patrick McHenry, expanding the powers in the interim of finding a permanent speaker? What would that look like?
Well, it's controversial. It's never been done before. There are some Republicans that are going to move something, most likely, if they get to that point, move some sort of legislation, or it's called a resolution, actually, that would give him more power to actually move policy, move legislation. But once again, it's controversial. It is typically seen as not something you typically do, and it may be unconstitutional. Right. So there could be a fight there as well.
Okay, we'll keep watching it. David, it's always good to see you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Coming up, a show of solidarity. Lawmakers recount their meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, how the U.S. is helping Israel in the fight when Faith Nation returns.
Welcome back. A bipartisan group of lawmakers met with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu in Israel this week following the brutal Hamas terrorist attacks.
After arriving back in the States, one senator on that trip spoke with CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka about the show of solidarity.
We have spent the day in Israel meeting with a number of affected families and speaking with leaders.
Iowa Senator Joni Ernst traveled to Israel just days after the brutal attack from Hamas. She led a bipartisan congressional delegation to the Middle East that first met with leaders in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain.
I was very adamant about continuing our trip into Israel to show solidarity with Israeli leaders and the people of Israel against these horrific Hamas attacks, brutal, violent attacks.
The senator, along with 2 House Republicans and 3 Democrats, talked with Netanyahu about helping in the fight.
The Prime Minister shared with us different items that they might need. And of course, we need to make sure that we're reconstituting the Iron Dome.
As the number of dead and wounded continues to rise, Ernst says the conversations with survivors still stick with her. She met an Israeli family that defended themselves as Hamas terrorists invaded their farm.
The Hamas terrorists, as they invaded the home, bought some very precious time for their mother to escape, but their brother was murdered in this attack as well. They have no idea where their father is. They don't know his condition, if he's even still alive.
Ernst and a growing number of Republicans and Democrats have pushed the Biden administration to freeze $6 billion released to Iran as part of a prisoner swap deal. As accusations fly about Iran's possible role in Israel, pressure has grown, leading to reports that money is again frozen, although White House officials won't acknowledge it publicly.
I'm not going to talk about diplomatic conversations one way or another, Ed. What I can tell you is that every single dime of that money is still sitting in the Qatari bank. Not one dime of it has been spent.
Ernst says pressure must remain on the Biden administration to enforce Iranian sanctions.
This deal never should have happened in the first place, and I have been highly critical of the Biden administration for continuing to appease Iran. We know they are the largest state sponsor of terrorism. They fund organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah, the Houthis, and they create chaos in the Middle East. Iran fears peace. And so they continue to engage in these types of terror attacks against our friend and ally Israel.
Senator Ernst also said that the lack of a Speaker of the House in Congress was worrisome because it prevents the United States from providing any sort of congressional aid. She said that every ally they met with in the Middle East was concerned about the situation. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Thank you, Matt. Building a foundation of faith. When we come back, the country music stars carrying on tradition at Habitat for Humanity.
Welcome back. Former President Jimmy Carter is 99 and counting. And in his honor, some pretty famous faces recently appeared for Habitat for Humanity's Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project.
Over the years, the project has built, renovated, and repaired thousands of homes in 14 different countries. CBN's Abigail Robertson brings us that story from North Carolina.
For 35 years, the Carters have donated a week of their time each year to building safe and affordable homes as part of the Carter Work Project. Since this is the first year they haven't been on site, country music superstars Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood are taking the reins. They're here in Charlotte, leading nearly 3,000 volunteers in building 27 new homes.
Seeing the families and knowing from doing this before how happy they are now and how much happier they're going to be once they get into that house. I think that's what it is for me. That's the thing that I love the most.
The country music power couple has volunteered with Habitat for Humanity alongside the Carters for more than a decade.
But the truth is, great leaders, whether they're there or not, are there. The Carters are here. Chip and Becky, their boy and his wife are here. They work harder than anybody else. But they stay in the background. Just there's that humility again in service. That's it. So there's your light. Just follow it.
This year, Garth and Trisha get the honor of handing the new homeowners their keys in a Bible, a long-standing tradition at Habitat for Humanity.
If you've got that Bible, you've always got that foundation, you can start over. If you're at rock bottom, there's the Bible. If you're on top, there's the Bible. I think it's as much a foundation as the floor you're standing on in your house.
With faith at their core, volunteers begin each day with a morning devotional and along the way write scripture and encouraging messages on homes as they build them.
I hope that they know that every nail that has been driven, every board that has been placed has been done so with love.
While the organization has built homes since 1976, CEO Jonathan Reckford credits the Carters for turning the once small operation into what it is today.
The world found out about Habitat in 1984 when President Carter and Mrs. Carter rode a bus up from Plains, Georgia to New York City and spent a week sleeping in a church basement and rehabbing a tenement building on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And no one had ever seen a former president of the United States behaving this way.
In order to qualify for a Habitat for Humanity home, homeowners must volunteer for almost 300 hours, plus take classes on financial management and home maintenance. As part of the home purchasing process, Habitat works with the buyer to ensure the mortgage allows the family to spend no more than 30% of their income on housing.
That's one of the reasons that Habitat homeowners have been incredibly successful, even though they are lower income than most other homeowners.
For future homeowners like Brianna Sanford, Habitat for Humanity is a dream come true.
I couldn't have done it without God. I'm telling you, God is awesome.
Sanford helped design her new home that she'll soon share with her 2 kids.
So I'll be able to live more comfortable, be able to take my kids and do more, take them out of town, different places that we've never been before. It is just going to be a break.
While many first-time homeowners like Brianna will receive their keys this week, Habitat for Humanity volunteers will continue working at this site until 39 homes in the community are completed. Reporting from Charlotte, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Coming up, a labor of love to help Israelis in crisis.
Finally tonight, as the Israeli-Hamas war rages on, a hopeful note from behind the scenes.
CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl takes a look at people coming up with creative ways to serve from the sidelines.
This is one of the toughest times facing Israelis in decades. Still, they have a knack for pulling together during a crisis.
This is the Satya restaurant in Jerusalem. It's closed for business now due to the war in Israel, but the owner and volunteers are making a lot of amazing food for a very good cause.
We organize about bringing a lot of food, and we cook, like all week, and send a lot of hundreds of plates to family that came from, near Gaza, to soldiers.
Owner Ilan Garusi and his staff have been preparing hundreds of meals a day for soldiers and those who fled from around the Gaza border.
We just cook. During the evening, we make preparation, and now in the morning we cook a lot of stuff, like pasta bolognese, kube, meatballs, and whatever we get, and we just cook, and after that we send all, like in the area of 12, 1 o'clock, everything is prepared, and we just send it.
The food is packed in cartons, picked up and transported to those in need. Garusi said he's providing the food free of charge while his staff volunteers their time.
Thanks for all our customers that during all those years that they came here to Satya and ate and drink, this money also came from you, because now we spend this money also.
Garusi's 3 sons currently serve as combat soldiers. He says while the Army may provide snacks there, the soldiers need a warm meal. He says his restaurant is just one of many helping out in these tough times.
This is the most beautiful hours of the Israeli citizen. This is our power, and we go this low. So from here, we just have to climb up, and it will be. I think this is the power of the people in Israel. We fight, and I think we'll succeed. From this point, we climb to a higher level.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Yeah, looking to a higher level. I love his attitude and just the way he's choosing to look at this.
Everybody is doing their part. I mean, from making food to delivering the food. Some people are transporting families where they need to go.
Yeah, all hands on deck.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Have a great weekend.